Well, thanks for coming today. Everybody's up bright and early and stuff on a cool morning. My name is Mick, and this is Audrey. And our presentation today is on seed starting, and we're going to tell you how we do it. We're going to tell you about some of the tools that we use, and some of the tools that we use kind of go up to a different level because of the amount of production that we do here versus home production. Most of the things, none of this can go. We can't give you a program without a sales pitch, so we'll try to keep it kind of minimum, though. And these are things that we have available, but there's lots of things available that will also work. But we'd really like to share with you the primary thing on all of this is really listen to your neighbors. This is a good time to adopt a gardener, and there's a lot of talent out there, and a lot of our older gardeners that really don't have quite the stamina or the ability to garden like they used to, and go over and tap them on the shoulder, lean over the fence the old-fashioned way and saying, how did you guys grow tomatoes? Or what was your most favorite variety? Or, when it comes through the season and stuff, here, throw them a few tomatoes, or you might end up expanding your little garden space to their old garden space, and then it really becomes kind of fun. Because the whole process on all of that is sharecropping, like we used to do. So much of us are into, I've got to get this done for me. We've got to let go of all of that and learn from a lot of the people that have done this for all their life. A few years ago and stuff, just to share a really quick story, there was a guy that came in. He said, I want to try this. My great-granddad had a Bible. He kept all of his tomato seeds in the Bible. My granddad was not the gardener in the family, and neither was my dad. So all of these seeds stayed in there, in this Bible. So he brought in the seed. He said, do you think these seeds would go? And I said, I really don't think so. I mean, they're over 40 years old and been sitting in the, if anything's going to salvage them, the Bible's going to salvage them, So anyway, the crux of the whole thing is he brought the seeds in. We planted them for him. Every one of the seeds germinated, which is really strange because that's kind of one of those deals, this is an act sort of thing. So every one of them germinated. He took them. We just sent them home with him. I was thinking we'd see him again. We didn't bring any back for us. So. But that's okay. I mean, I think the success thing and what that did for him is it skipped 2 generations, and he was back into gardening, and he really wanted to try this. So good stuff. Maybe they didn't last very long. I don't know. They might have been out of excitement or enthusiasm to keep going. So anyway, seed has a lifespan, and as we kind of go along here, let's just start with the seed packets and how to read those.
Okay.
And Audrey will walk you through that portion of it and stuff, because this is the Bible portion of all of this. And we'll give you, why don't you each take a sheet on that. We're going to go through this. Do you have a copy of this? We're going to go through this, and we want you to follow along, because this is the experience of what this seed represents and how the seed will react and what you need to look for germination time and the time to transplant and what it looks like versus weeds and so forth, perennial weeds. And the main thing to think about to start out with is if you're going to plant things like tomatoes, cucumbers, some of the other things that, peppers, those are 3 that come to mind right off the bat that are the most popular. Our average last frost date in Billings is May 15th. Start to plant your stuff about 4 weeks prior to that indoors, okay? So 4 weeks prior to the transplanting time outside. Now the steps to go through that, we're going to start out with how to read the seed packet first, and then we're going to go into how we do it here and then the finished product.
So y'all have the summer squash one, right? That's what. So a lot of people, there's so much information on the back of the seed packets. It'll pretty much tell you everything that you need to know. Warm season, 50 days, that's from the time, after the last chance of the spring frost. So squash, cucumbers, some of these, they really would rather be started like in hills of 2 to 3 instead of necessarily directly starting them inside. just because they're not as easy to transplant into your garden as what. But you know, like it says, when to start inside. Not recommended unless if it's very short season climates, 2 to 4 weeks before the average last frost. So if you can only start it inside 2 to 4 weeks before, then this is a seed that this particular one is one that you can just go ahead and directly sow outdoors. When you get into your tomatoes and peppers and eggplant and ones that take 8 weeks, well, then, you know, with September comes along and you have a nice healthy plant but no fruit on it. So back to the actual back of, it says it's an heirloom, which is an older seed. From the older, they say heirlooms are 50 years or older, and those are not the hybridized ones. You have a little bit more of the flavor. The prices, sometimes people ask, well, how come $2.39 as opposed to 39 cents, what you can get at some of the other places? This has 2.5 grams of seeds in it. Otherwise, a lot of them will say 50 seeds, 100 seeds. You can kind of feel also down in here how many seeds are in and you can come up after we're done here and feel what's in. So you kind of get what you pay for, even the germination rate and such. Also, on the very bottom here, you'll see where it says lot number, packed for 2012 and sell by 12/31/2012. The reason they have the lot number, it's that this company can go, if they just start having tons of phone calls saying why or this seed did not germinate, they can go back to lot number in their greenhouse, in these growing places, and find out what the story is, why this did not germinate. That's what lot number 1 means. It's packed for 2012. We want to use this seed probably by the end of 2012 for a great germination rate. However, if you don't, if you seal this guy up, keep it in a cool, dry spot, you can use it the following year. I wouldn't want to tell you that you cannot. You know, you have lots and lots of squash if you plant all these seeds just for yourself.
The viability after a year of storage, or the germination percentage, falls off every year. So that's the reason for part of the statement about storage ability on the seed, or even gathering your own seed. There's a certain amount of time that you will get X amount of germination for the seed. Some of them will say 100% germination. Some of them will say 70% germination. So, you know, for every 10 you plant, 7 of them come up. Is that enough for you? I don't know. You know, that's an individual deal.
So anyway, it has the days to emerge, 5 to 10 days. The seed depth that they want you to plant it, the seed, because if you plant it too deep, it will not, you know, that could be one reason why it may not germinate, is if you get it too deep. If you just have it laying on the top of your soil and the wind comes up, well, you might have it over in the neighbor's yard. So you want to you know, and it's going to tell you the information on the back here for every spacing, 2 to 3 seeds per mound. With squash, cucumbers, such, you do want to put 2 to 3 seeds per mound, and you just build up a little mound of soil, you put them in there, and then when you water them, and eventually the soil will adjust, but if one doesn't come up, you still have 2. That's why, you know, they say 2 to 3, and if 3 comes up, that's great, because then you get more squash or cucumbers. And when you do this particular one, when you do 2 to 3, you don't need to thin any out. It does say, you know, you can thin to be just 1 plant per mound, but when it comes to tomatoes and some of the other ones, you do need to thin some of those. But that's kind of in a nutshell how you read the back of a seed packet. It tells you lots of information. So And everyone will be different, you know, as far as the.
That's your whole guideline right there, other than the neighbor over the fence line. Okay. My father-in-law was in his early 90s, and he was still hand spading his 1,200-foot garden. And he said it was a little tough on him. It'd take him 3 days rather than 1 day. But he would not, you know, then the purity portion of things, rototillers were not a part of his life. Everything was turned in the garden. And as I remember, he's the one that indicated to me, he said, don't use a shovel, the soil's too heavy. Use a pitchfork to turn the soil. Now that makes a lot more sense to me. And something particularly with the long handle, so I don't have to go down too far, because that's why long handles are on things, so you can use them to get back up again. So think about soil conditions are the most critical thing in the final step of transplanting your seedlings or direct sowing into the garden.
So now we want to talk about what we're going to do when we start seeds indoors. Just the back of this particular seed packet was kind of more for the outdoors after the frost is gone. So there's lots of different options here for.
Start with that organic seed,
Yep.
or organic soil, and then our own
Yep.
seedling mix.
So the soil is an important factor here. You can't see what's on the inside here, but it's going to tell you everything that's inside here on the back, which it's going to be really fine. It's going to probably have some vermiculite in it and some perlite, because the little roots are so fine that we want to get some air pockets in there. We don't want the heavy, you know, you don't just use garden soil. See, this white is perlite. It's going to let you get some air pockets too. So the soil in any, not just seeds, in any plant is very important for what you don't see of a plant is probably more important than what you do, so that you have a healthy plant. So you can either put this directly into one of these flats with that soil and use like your little marker or a knife to, you know, do your little tunnels.
I'm going to tip that up.
Whoops. And of course you always want to use water to get this moisture wet before you actually put your seed in there, or otherwise when you go to water, and it has to be a mister. You want to always mist your seeds right when you get them started, or another good way is to go ahead and just water from underneath somehow, so that it can wick up the water from the bottom of it doesn't disturb the seed. You could go ahead, so you don't have to mess with them later, you could go ahead and put some of this mixture right into these 4-packs, and then just take your seed and lightly put one in each one. Once again, not letting it get too deep. You don't want it to be falling to the bottom here. So what you're going to do is you're going to put your soil in, you're going to mist it all down with your mister, and then you're going to take either your marker. I'm having this so that I cannot forget to tell you to mark everything that you. And so you use, and just make a little hole, drop your seed in there, and just pinch it, and then give it one little mist again. Then you're going to set this guy on top of it for a little greenhouse effect, and it's going to show you how it's doing on the inside by creating moisture on the underneath here. And when you don't have any moisture, you don't ever want to let this dry out, but there's a fine line there, because you don't want it to be too wet either. It's almost better if it's a little more on the dry side than the wet side, as far as dampening off is when it gets too wet and you know, there's no oxygen getting to the root system. So that's one way.